Morning guys, Moorhuhn here. Today we're taking a look at the Fireburst Elementalist. We're going for a pretty deep dive here. I prepared some script and yeah. For now I want to show the build in a fairly juiced map. And yeah, let's just take a look. We are doing like one very juiced map first and then one not all that juiced map and see how it performs like in action. After that we will go through the gear and see like what are important pieces, how to get the important pieces. I won't do an like exact crafting guide here because the pieces are, some of them are pretty complex to create, and I will like make proper crafting examples or ideas of how to craft them later on in a written form, because that's a lot easier to understand, I believe. Wait, fuck. As you can see, this version is fairly min-maxed here. I have invested about, I'd say, 100 divines into this current setup. And I currently am working on a new staff. I have already pured like 200 divines in, more or less. But we sadly are not finished with that one yet. But yeah, I want to create a like full tier 1 really good staff, which is completely overkill but really cool. And yeah, that one still takes time because I need like a few hundred more divines to finish it, most likely. But yeah, as you can see, the clear is really good on the character, which comes mostly due to the ignite proliferation combined with the Aurea's End Flask. So we like get close to a pack and explode like 2 screens in every direction, more or less. Also, the build at this point is okay-ish tanky, I'd say. It's not like an insane tank or something in that direction, but we have a fairly decent life pool. We have a lot of damage. Progenesis helps a bit with defense. We have good resistances. Not insane resistances, but we are nearly chaos capped. We have the other resistances at 76. We've got absolutely no armor, we've got no evasion, but we got 6 portals, which is pretty good. But yeah, you should keep in mind that these monsters here have a lot of HP due to the, and deal a lot of damage, like due to the sextant mods. We have 100% more life on beasts, we have the boss has 200% more life and stuff like that. So the enemies are fairly well pumped, except for this harvest. What the fuck? It's so bad. Yeah. You can like compare. What the fuck? The yellow harvest like just have no nodes in them. What the hell? Yeah, you could compare this clear to the one I uploaded a few days ago, which I believe is significantly worse at that point. What the all? Holy fuck, we're getting like 700. Okay, this is so sad. You're losing like 1,500 yellow life force on this map. It's insane. But okay, yeah, this is pretty much the clear of a pretty juiced map. It's fairly fast for this kind of juice. I mean, the map is like juiced with packs, not with mechanics, which is a pretty good kind of juice because it does not take ages. But yeah, it's a lot of enemies. Oh, nice. We can actually, yeah, we just do this. And then we can see it in action at the boss. This map can brick the build. There's one mod we cannot run, which is Avoid Ignite, and I just hope, no, okay, it doesn't seem like it has Avoid Ignite. As you can see, the clear is like still good, but it's a little annoying when there's not a lot of enemies around. The single target at this point is really good. I have even killed Uber Maven on the Autobomber, which is an achievement I didn't really look for in an auto bomber, because it's not really what it's like made for. But yeah, you can see the clear is significantly worse when there's less packs, because the chain explosions just don't work as well. So this build specifically is really, really good at clearing like 80% plus pack size maps. Everything below that feels kinda okayish, but you could play any other character and be as fast, more or less. But the really high pack size maps where the chain explosions and the ignites chain off of each other is like really where this character shines. So yeah. Then we got some boss DPS in addition as well. We don't know what mods were on that map, but yeah, it's still a Conqueror, and I believe for a Conqueror, this build, like for an auto bomber, the single target DPS is really good. When we take a look at the, this one has the different stuff in here. We have like 20 million damage or something in that direction when all buffs are up. I'd say like 10 million under other circumstances, for like when the Bottle Fate is not there and stuff like that. This version uses the Atsiris instead of the Progenesis, which deals some more damage, but it's not like really insane. So yeah, actually we don't have the Atsiris in the setup, so it's even more what's called the Bottle Faith here. So with the Bottle Faith we would have even more damage. The enemy on consecrated ground, yes. And with the perfect staff I currently am working on, we would reach like 33 million ignite DPS or more. And actually I believe we do hit ignite cap somewhere, so the damage calculation here is a little wonky. When we take a look at the configuration, this is not active. Consecrated ground for bosses, obviously. Crit recently should be a yes in most circumstances, because we have a pretty damn good crit chance. If we haven't crit recently, it's even higher, with 35% crit chance. So we have a really good uptime of Elemental Overload as well, which helps tremendously on bosses. Then we have chilled, ignited, and shocked recently because we are an Elementalist. I quickly enable in-game music here a little, so we have some background. We have Convergence. When we are at bosses, we do have Convergence, obviously. We do not have this for like the yellow plants or stuff like that, so that can be a little annoying. But yeah, highest damage time will always be fire. The enemy is always ignited, is always chilled, is always shocked. Chilled due to the chilled ground of the Frostblink, which is on the ground for like 4 seconds or something. The enemy is exposed to fire, the enemy is covered in ash because we ignite them, and again it's on control ground. The enemies has withered stacks, we check on that later on, I will show why it is, and we are on Pinnacle DPS, or like Guardians and Pinnacle bosses. For Ubers we have like 10 millions, but this is not an Uber build. Except I still did Uber Maven, which is pretty insane for a build like this. I guess Uber Shaper is doable. I think the Exarch and Eater, this build just is not tanky enough for, and the Uber Elder, there's just too much around. But yeah, this is not a build made for killing Ubers. But yeah, let's take a look at what this build actually is doing. So we are playing Fireburst. Fireburst comes from the weapon and activates when we hit an enemy. Like when we hit the enemy, there is an explosion that ignites the enemy and activates a chain that just kills everything. And then when we kill an enemy that is shocked, we activate Herald of Thunder. The enemies are always shocked because we're an Elementalist, so the Herald of Thunder hits the enemies, the Herald of Thunder activates the Fireburst, and the Fireburst activates the Herald of Thunder again. So we have an Herald of Thunder Fireburst loop, which activates itself all the time as long as we are killing enemies. If we are not killing enemies, we just either dash onto them to enable the Fireburst again and kill something and start the chain, or we use our focus. I will explain the focus later on. Then, yeah, we have permanent phase run up on this build. Our phase run duration is at 2.6 seconds, and the cooldown is at 2.6 seconds. The buff lasts for over nearly 3 seconds, so it is up at almost all times, except when we dash in a bad moment. So yeah, but that happens and it's kind of whatever. You have phase run pretty much all the time, which is pretty nice for the movement speed buff. You can put an enhance here as well with some different setups to make it even faster. To just give more increased movement speed. Then we've got Rampage, which is kind of interesting. I cannot really show it here, and I do always forget it in maps, because if we hit an enemy with the Fire Burst, we can quickly weapon swap to Sinvicta's Metal, which activates Rampage. I do pretty much always forget that, but yeah, you can do that if you want to. It's kind of strange with the timing, because you need to activate it after hitting an enemy, but before killing enemies, before killing all enemies. And with the damage I have in this character, it's extremely difficult to weapon swap before everything is dead, because the chain explosion of the RSN just goes through, whoop, 2 screens away, everything dead, and we just can't weapon swap fast enough. So it's kind of annoying, and I really stopped doing that pretty much all the time, because that's not really necessary. But it gives movement speed, gives damage, it's quite cool. But yeah, you can do that, you don't have to. Other than that, that's pretty much what the build is doing. And yeah, let's take a look at the actual gear. If we manage to get here. Want to be my hideout for that. So I like my hideout. So let's take a look. The key piece of the entire build is it's a staff with Fire Burst, obviously. You want an Eclipse staff for the crit. You want Fire Burst on it, and you want some flat damage on it. You then can just multi-craft Fire Damage over Time multiplier and gain Fire's extra Chaos, because Elementalist doesn't care about the damage type. We can use more Chaos, edit Chaos damage to increase our Ignite. This works pretty well on Fractured Fire damage base. These are pretty damn rare, however. I had to wait 3 days for one to come online, so I could get one. You don't need the perfect one, you can get with 120% or something, and that still works great. The one I am currently working on has the Fire Damage over Time multiplier, Fractured, and I used, I think, 400 Essences of Hysteria. That's about 100 Divines in Essences, more or less, a little less, 80 Divines in Essences to hit the tier 1 damage over time multiplier, and then working on the prefixes, it took over 200 Divines at this point and will probably take another 200. So yeah, this stuff later on will replace my current one, but that has time. What is pretty cool about Fire Burst is that the staff doesn't have to be linked, because all the supports automatically support Fire Burst, which also means that we can take 6 supports, which is pretty good, because usually we only have 5, but here we can take 6. The most important part of the supports, or the most important support, is the Awakened Unbound Ailments. You more or less want the Awakened one because it gives 80% increased duration of ailments on enemies, which is very, very long. So our ignites last, I think, about 2 seconds, which is pretty good. Which also means that the proliferations last about 2 seconds, which enables good chains and even kill Ether mobs after they spawn. Because I specifically built this character because I didn't want to wait for Ether mobs to spawn. I just wanted to kill them with the proliferation. So that's why you still want a pretty decent ignite duration. Then we use Anomalous Combustion, Awaken Deadly Ailments, Efficacy, Ignite Proliferation, and Awaken Burning Damage. There's nothing insanely expensive here. I think the Unbound Ailments is the more expensive one, but even that one is fairly fine with 2 Divines. Actually, Deadly Ailments could be, yeah, something. You like some Divines for the gems if you want high level ones. Then we are using the Body Armor Replica Shroud of the Lightless. This one is pretty cool and more or less necessary. In the end, I will talk about a version without the replica of the Lightless for a moment, because this one enables us to use a lot of jewels, which give flat damage, which is great because the fire burst, it doesn't show here, but has 250% added damage conversion. How it's called? Added damage thing. Effectiveness of added damage 250%, which scales very well with flat damage from jewels. Also, we do need about 13% cooldown reduction or 14% cooldown reduction from gems to get the cooldown below 1 second. And we want it below 1 second to have 1 hit every 4 Herald of Thunder hits. Because if it is above 1 second, it's 1 fire burst hit every 5 Herald of Thunder hits, so 1.25 seconds longer, which is very, very noticeable while clearing. Sadly, we can't really get it below 7.4 because we need like 60% more reduced recovery rating. It is more or less possible, but it's so finicky that it doesn't really, like, it's not really worth it to go for it. Other than that, we just want life and flat added damage and some cooldown. And let's take a look at the gloves. For the gloves, you want resistances, and exposure is like the most important part here. Other than that, you just want resistances and stats. I used to have very high dex values here. Currently my suffixes are not great, but they are enough, and I currently have to work with enough because all my currency flows into my staff crafting. So yeah, just want life. You can take plus AoE gems for like the auras. And yeah, other than that, just life and stuff like that. For the boots, you want cooldown reduction and tailwind for the speed. I was pretty lucky early league with the combination. I wanted to craft them for sale, just for fun, and then hit ignite faster on them, and they just didn't sell, which was kind of a miracle. And then I just decided to, well, use them myself, whatever. And these boots are more or less the reason I play this build for. We want the enchantment, increased critical strike chance if you haven't crit recently, which is pretty good for keeping uptime on Elemental Overload. What you really need on the boots is cooldown reduction. You want the 20% cooldown reduction. Everything else is just nice to have. A lot of movement speed, onslaught, tailwind, more movement speed, life. Yeah, and ignite faster is a pretty good damage multiplier, like 5 or 6% more damage. Then let's take a look at the helmet. For the helmet, we use faster ignite again, and nearby enemies have minus 12 fire resistances. You can start out with the non-elevated versions and just go from there. Other than that, I just have life, and the most important mod here is trigger socketed gems spells when you focus, which is very, very important on the variant I am playing. I did play it without that before, but it took more gem sockets and it was annoying. I was working with like weapon swap and stuff like that, and not with weapon swap, but with gem swaps, because we're using flame surge, flammability, elemental weakness, and stormbrand. And before I had not stormbrand, but the arcanist brand together with the weak elemental, with flammability and flame surge. Before I was swapping to the dual curse setup, but the dual curse setup is really strong, and I would recommend to use this version, especially because trigger, like focus, does not have a cast time, so you can just use it at all times and trigger everything, which is pretty nice. And then let's take a look at the belt. I am using a cooldown, movement speed, chaos stress belt with some damage in the prefixes. This one was like 20 or 30 divines to make. You can use a Torrent's Reclamation, which is a very, very good piece on the build. For a long time I have used one myself. I can quickly, let me see, I have one somewhere. There we go. I used one with movement speed bonus and some aura effect, which is irrelevant. Just look for 20% cooldown reduction. They don't really cost a lot. This one is extremely overpriced and won't ever sell at this price probably. I don't even know. I have just threw it in there, and because it's currently the only one with 20% cooldown recovery and movement speed. You don't need the movement speed, it's just like I want to have the build as fast as possible. So yeah. The Torrent's Reclamation also is a lot faster than this because we're getting the Harbinger buff, which like gives us action speed, which works better when we have actually like gear. So yeah, Terran's Reclamation is a very good alternative to a rare belt. And actually I'd say I'd recommend to use the Torrents because you're even faster. This one is just for pushing more damage and chaos resistances for no good reason. Then let's take a look at the rings. The rings are pretty straightforward for pretty much any Ignite build. It's a Prolonged Devastation for the cover enemies in Ash, some crit chance, element duration and elemental damage. And then we've got the Replica Amber Wake with faster Ignite. It's just pretty much the best ring you can use on these builds. If we take a look at the path of building, we lose like a lot of damage. We use like 18% damage, and you can, or 23% ignite DPS. I feel like I reach ignite cap here, that's why it's not showing well how much damage we're actually gaining when we use this. Yeah, it's 17, 20, whatever percent damage. I'm actually not sure if I could make a better one with a very, very good rare. I haven't checked that out because the Amber Wake pretty much fulfills our needs. But it would be interesting because we would have very, very long ignite durations, which would be really nice for bosses. But yeah, I probably will work on that at some point because there is some stuff possible. I will look into that actually after this. But yeah, let's take a look at the amulet, which is a little more interesting, which has damage over time multi and fire damage over time multi, also resistance, life and movement speed. These ones are pretty much impossible to create. You should buy one from the market with damage over time multiplier and fire damage over time multiplier, because the odds of rolling both of these mods are pretty much non-existent. Especially on the Shaper base, it is like really difficult to get these, so just get one from someone who dropped them identified, or like drop them that way. With the both multipliers, you can then use suffixes cannot be changed, reforged speed for the movement speed. The other version to make this would be to spam for damage over time multiplier and then throw on a suffix Hunter Exalt and hope for the fire damage over time multiplier tier 1, which is like a 7% hit or something. So you would have to throw 13 or 12 Hunter Orbs on different amulets to get the mod, which would make for a better amulet and probably is like a goal at some point, but really not a priority because these two mods are the most important. There aren't other great mods on the amulet for the build, so it's kind of whatever what you get there. So yeah, and on the Shaper base, the movement speed mod is a little easier to hit and better, I think. For the flasks, the most important piece is the Aurea's End. I would recommend to use this flask. It is rising in price, I believe, and it is fairly expensive. That's actually not rising, it's 22 divines for a bad one. This one is pretty much enabling the chain explosions and you want this flask. All other flasks are whatever, but you want this one. We use an immune to bleed and corrupting blood life flask as on pretty much any other build I play. With the bubbling, I just love this mod, it's pretty good. You then use either Progenesis or an Adseries, and then use a movement speed flask paired with like either a Bottled Faith if you want more damage, or like Granite Flask with armor. You can pair these in this direction with armor on the Quicksilver and movement speed on the Granite. This way it is cheaper to buy these flasks because the mods don't fit each other. Like the mods supplement each other but don't fit on the flask itself, so they are cheaper. Yeah, that's pretty much the flask setup here, and yeah. This is the gear of the character, I believe. If you have any questions about that, feel free to ask. We are now taking a look at the passive tree. So this is the dual curse setup with Whispers of Doom enabled. Again, we could play a different tree if I was using different body armor, but that we can talk about later on. Overall, the tree took many, many turns. I started out pretty much completely left-sided before I went for double curse, with a lot of nodes here and more life here and some more life nodes here and damage over time multiplier here and here and here and whatever. And at some point it said, okay, I want the dual curse, I want more cluster jewels, so we went for the top side and went here. A very recent addition to the build is the Eldritch Battery Keystone. The Elemental Overload is pretty much mandatory on pretty much any Ignite build, but the Eldritch Battery solved so many issues I had before enabling it, and I was so stubborn to not use it, because I used this on so many builds and I just completely forgot about it. I was trying out to get the right amount of mana and the reservation and everything fit in to get the triggers, and just using Eldritch Battery solves all the problems. Depending on the level of the Enlightened, you might have to take more reservation nodes here, or get a better small cluster we talk about later. If you want to drop Anger for some less damage, you can or drop Putative Elements, which is possible also. I do mostly use this because of the Eldritch mod that reflects ailments, which is really annoying when we put a 50 shock and 30 chill on ourselves. So I just use Putative Elements to avoid that. If you either if you drop one of these two, you can then also drop most of the reservation nodes, which is fairly nice. And yeah, overall this tree is at this point fairly min-maxed. I don't really have any nodes left. I could put other somewhere else. I could technically take these 3 nodes and put them elsewhere, but this might actually, yeah, okay, this would actually work. I could put these nodes somewhere else. They don't really have much of a purpose. Actually 3 nodes I could use other. I could actually use them better. Why are they there? Whatever, I will talk about this later. We will take these out so I don't forget. I want these somewhere else. These were important when I was still juggling around with my mana, but at this point I could just put them somewhere else and get more life out of it, like here. And have some more life. Or we can go for another medium cluster jewel for more damage also. But yeah, I recently did take out 1 cluster jewel to change up the tree. The way 1 medium, but that's actually I just ramble around here. Let's get to the actual tree. We are using some damage over time stuff. We're scaling shock effect. We're scaling faster ignites. We take better fire exposure. We take damage over time multi-mastery. We are taking a lot of elemental damage here. We take the increased effect of non-damaging elements again for shock effect. And yeah, we're taking dual curse. I talked about that, and then auras. We have an impossible escape for Leaf Shade to take Snowforged, Written in Blood, and Growth of Decay, which all of these are really, really strong nodes. Other than that, yeah, let's take a look. We talked about the keystones. We want to talk about the jewels. Let's take a look at the unique jewels I'm using. I am using a Lethal Pride. The keystone is absolutely irrelevant. We don't care about it, but we want faster ignites. I have here 2 faster ignite nodes and 2 life nodes, which is pretty good. You could get up to 3 faster ignite nodes, but these jewels are extremely expensive. And you also have to care about not destroying your nodes, which is, and actually on this one it's, never mind. But you have you want the faster ignites on the right nodes, and it's kind of annoying. 2 faster ignites and then some supplementary passives is very, very fine. We are using a Forbidden Flesh and Flame very recently here. Here it doesn't really matter. You either get Bastion of Elements, Shape of Storms, or Shape of Flames. I did decide for Shape of Flames because it was the cheapest one together with Shape of Storms. But the small node here is stronger than this. And the small node here gives all res, which at the moment where I took this, I still needed, so I wanted it. So yeah, you can also take the Bastion of Elements, Forbidden Flame. You can also not use this at all. And just back into these. These are not really necessary. If you don't want these, you can drop an entire cluster here, which is about 8 levels. You can put somewhere else or just not get to level 100 or something. Don't really, it's not that important. But it's a very, very nice defense, especially if we put in another medium cluster, because we have 2.5 to 2.9k fucking idiot. To 2.9k Primal Aegis, which is a pretty nice defense for like elemental damage when we don't have great defenses. Other than that, we're using a Balance of Terror here. This one gives all resistances, which is nice, and also inflicts Wither on enemies. We're using Wither for the belt enchant, which puts minus resistances on the enemies. So basically we just use the spare ones, and for 10 seconds we more or less have on hit -6 elemental resistances, which also is a mod you can put on the Abyss Jewels. I have not done that yet because I didn't play with the Wither for a long time. So these jewels were bought before I got the Wither set up. If I bought jewels now, I would probably put the reduced resistances in there as well. Other than that, you could also take a Balance of Terror jewel with reduced cooldown, increased cooldown recovery rate. But then you would have to cast Temporal Chains every now and then to like keep your great clear speed up at all times, like every 10 seconds. Like you could say every 3 phase run casts or every 4 phase run casts you activate Temporal Chains once to get around the cooldown. So you either can drop like the boots or take a different body armor, take a different belt or whatever. There's some pretty good options. You can actually take the Diadem's Dawn, I believe. Dawn, how it's called? Dawn belt PvE. How's it called? Diadem's. Oh, it's okay. It was more or less right. Like you take like more fast ignite or whatever. There's some pretty good options for belts, but you would have to self-cast Temporal Chains every now and then to keep like your cooldown reduction up at all times. Other than that, there is not really all that great Balance of Terror jewels for this build, but overall Balance of Terror is just a pretty nice jewel. What is important about this is for the Balance of Terror you have to self-cast. It does not work with the trigger setup, sadly, otherwise I would have the Despair and the Trigger and the Stormbrand on self-cast. Then we're using an Impossible Escape I talked about already here, which is a pretty good jewel. The Leith Shade variant is like a few divines, I don't know right now, but it is affordable and not extremely necessary. Like these nodes are really good but not necessary. Can also take like here these 3 nodes and then it's okay. Then we've got a Watcher's Eye with Chaos Resistance and Damage Over Time multiplier. I at some point used one with Damage Over Time multiplier and fire damage, which is more damage. But while running the Atlas strategy with the Scarabs, you more or less want good chaos resistances. With the Flask up, 60% is fine. I'd rather had 75, but it's okay, because there's a lot of chaos damage in the yellow plants. These are the unique jewels I'm using. For the non-unique jewels, I'm using a lot of, well, as I said, Abyss jewels, which give cooldown reduction, flat damage life. And then we are using cluster jewels. For the large clusters, I use Burning Bright and Saddest, which are the 2 best nodes we can take, because we do chill, we do ignite, we do shock, which says that we gain like 60% elemental damage, which is just very much, and we get some AoE. I use this setup 3 times. You can take others as well, but this one is the best. Actually, I do use Widespread here because I didn't have money at the moment where I got this. We didn't even X this, what the fuck. So yeah, I have to replace this one and get Saddest here for more damage. For the medium clusters, we just use stuff like Brush with Death. We want Brush with Death at least once because the recovery is really good. Especially with like Edge Battery, the Energy Shield, but it doesn't matter too much because we don't really use this up at all. Use like half of it for the trigger setup. And then an important one is... Actually, why do I have... I'm a fucking idiot. Why do I have this still? I have Ignite Prolif. See, this is actually pretty funny. Whenever I do like a deep dive into builds, I always notice stuff like this. Why do I have a Fan the Flames jewel? This doesn't make any sense. Okay, never mind, it does make sense. So the reason why we are using both the Fan the Flames and the Ignite Proliferation is because the Ignite Proliferation has a bigger radius and is a really good multiplier. And actually I'm not sure if there's a better one. Can I actually take a look? I can't really take... I will look at this later. And probably write it below the video if there's a better one. But there, like, we pretty much use all the Ignite supports, like combustion and stuff. So yeah, there's not much left. We are using the Fan the Flames cluster because it proliferates from the explosions of the Oriath end. So this is very helpful with clearing, because the Ignite Proliferation on the gem does only work for the Fireburst itself, and the Ignite Proliferation from Fan the Flames works with all Ignites we are dealing, like, and yeah, this is why the Ignite is like working so well. So yeah, this is pretty much all I want to talk about here. No, there's one very important note. We are using a small cluster with increased effect and reservation stuff. You could get around this with like more reservation here, probably. But it's still a pretty good cluster. A 35% would be even better, but this one is good enough, and I like, with all the resistances, these are really expensive to make. And I have this for ages and didn't really want to replace it because I don't have to. Yeah, that's pretty much it with the tree, I believe. For the Pantheon, I use either Brine King or Soul of Araceli. I currently am using Brine King because I have Leaf Shade on the Sanctified Relic instead of Unwavering Stance. If I had Unwavering Stance, I would use Soul of Araceli. For the small one, we use Soul of Ruslata to make our Life Flask feel better. You can also take stuff like Immune to Burning Ground if you want to run Exarch, or reduce an effect of Shock if you don't want to run Putative Elements. Yeah, or reduced, where is it? Reflect stuff. Reduce Reflect together with the Mastery if you do not run the Bastion of Elements. But the Bastion of Elements also gives Reflect immunity, which is really nice because there's only one map mod we cannot run at this point, which is avoid elemental ailments, because we cannot ignite them, which is pretty stupid. For the Sanctified Relic, there's a lot of options. I currently am using Aura Effect. I was using where is it? Reservation Efficiency and Cold Damage before, but I had Solipsism on this for some testing stuff, and I wanted to swap to Leaf Shade, so I need another one, and Aura Effect's pretty good as well. Also, I do not need the Reservation Efficiency here anymore. If you use one with Reservation Efficiency, you can drop this node and probably some other nodes as well, or go down to a level 3 Enlighten, which makes it cheaper as well. Other than that, you can use movement speed, aura effect, flat damage, or a lot of other options for Sanctified Relics. But yeah, I use the invocation for Leaf Shade, which is really nice because we don't care about ailment duration on us, and less damage from damage over time always is great. For optional gear, I talked about the Balance of Terror, I talked about the body armor. You could combine then, if you wanted to replace the body armor, you would probably take a rare one with Eldritch, Aura Effect, and Malevolence Effect. Where is it? Malevolence Effect, and yeah. Also, another, like, other options would be, yeah, the Turret's Reclamation, as I said. And yeah, other than that, the gear is pretty set in stone. I still will check if I can make a better ring than the Replica Ember Wake, but I'm not sure about that. We will see. Maybe I come up with something cool with some currency investment, and yeah. This, I believe, is it for this build. If you have any questions about this character or whatever, just ask. Feel free to ask. Put it in the comments. I wish you a good day, have fun with the Bits Create, and see you in the next one. I can't find my button. There it is. See you.